You first. How Hey everybody, welcome to Kent with Bent, number 169. Nice. Doom, the Dark Ages. Sorry about the stream start soon video. Starting over again there for a second. I'm not actually sure why I did that. I'm blaming OBS for being a jerk. Also, hey, this stream was originally scheduled for noon, which isn't the right time. And that's on me, not on OBS. So let's take our first drink for Dapper's a Professional. I am drinking some rum and cola. Bent, what do you got?
Mountain Dew Baja Blast.
All right.
The best beverage ever made.
Which apparently is still in stores. So, like, I guess that whole limited time thing was just for pretensies.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, that's good. For me, at least. Because, quite frankly, I don't really want to go to Taco Bell every time I want Baja Blast. You know.
Yeah, me neither.
Sometimes I do want to go to Taco Bell. And when I do, I'm probably going to get Baja Blast. But, like, you know, still.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how you doing there today, Bent?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I am tired. I'm tired, Bent. I get up at 5:30 or so. I head out to the store around 6 to go get, you know, the rum and cola for the rum and cola. Then I started working. And let's see, I had already recorded audio late last night for the next video that's coming out, hopefully tomorrow, for early access, that is. Then I spent today, after the store, editing that audio, then putting that audio into an animation, then making a dummy video, then editing that whole thing together. So now that video is all edited together, and also uploading those frames. And then then I started on scripting the next video. Because it turns out that when I was like, oh, I'm 7 months ahead, I'm actually more like 5 months ahead right now. I wanna up those numbers. So on the one hand, what that means is I'm going to work longer. On the other hand, also going on 5 hours of sleep right now. Which is why the Super Chat goal is for us to call it a little bit early, watch Power Rangers a little bit early, and then I'm gonna go to sleep after Power Rangers. And basically, y'all get to control how soon it is that I go to sleep. And so, if you want me to go to sleep earlier, let's just do some Super Chats. If you don't do Super Chats, and that's how I know you don't like me. Also, I'm wearing a tutu because on a special, I believe in June, I think it was in June, might have been earlier this month, I don't know. I can't think today. You guys hit the Dapper Tutu number through a combination of giving donations here through super chats and membership gifting and all that, but also to the fundraiser for Vishanti. Now, Vishanti's fundraiser is currently at $3,161 with 17 days left and 57 contributions, and it is at 70% of its goal. So, I would love it if people would donate over there as well as here, and I will count those at a 1.2% rate in terms of things like Bent gets free pizza, wearing a tutu next time for Bent, not for me necessarily. And yeah, so there we go. Let's see. Osiris Phantom AIG says, I want Dapper to have a good sleep schedule, but with this power he's given us, it feels wrong not to take advantage of it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to respond to that. All right, we got a few things here. Let's see. Osiris Phantom A. Oh no, wait. There's a membership super chat from Osiris Phantom AIG, who's been a member for 38 months, is at the annual level, says, I'm running this on a high school calculator. I expect it to work, but I'm still surprised. What is this, Doom? Which it is, actually. It's Dumb, the Dark Ages. All right, so let's go over the drinking rules real quick. So we will take a drink for every time that, well, first, Dapper is a professional, which means that I screw up the production. Now, it's not just that something goes wrong with the production. For instance, if OBS crashes, or my media player crashes, or the webcam crashes, or, I don't know, YouTube crashes, if any of those things happen, that's not on me. But if I do something like I forget to unmute Bent, or I accidentally mute myself and keep myself muted, or I don't know, accidentally rewind to the beginning of the video, or something like that, then that's a Dapper as a professional. We'll also take a drink if Kent just says something that's too stupid. And we'll take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if Kent says something that's actually factually correct, and it's not just something he's reading off of a slide or quoting from a book or something. It actually has to be an idea from his head that's correct and that he articulates. We'll also take a drink for every time Kent tells a joke that doesn't land or tells a story that didn't happen. Now, that is a little bit of a judgment call as to stories that didn't happen, but he tells a lot of tall tales. And when he does, we usually take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink anytime Kent Hovind brings up that German political movement from like the 1930s and 40s, which is weirdly becoming popular in a few places in the world nowadays, including, just here where I live. So that's fun. We'll also take a drink for if Kent Hovind conflates what we can know about just Lucy, the specimen of Australopithecus afarensis, with what we can know about any larger taxon to which she belongs. So, for instance, if he's like, well, we don't know if Lucy could have walked upright because we didn't find her feet. Like, yeah, well, we found a lot of other Australopithecus feet, Kent, so who cares? That's an ad hominem. We only get one of those per stream. Well, we also have a Trojan source. That's when Kent Hovind cites a source. We check the source, and not only does it fail to deport him, it actively contradicts him. This is similar to the first law of Flurf, if you're familiar with I believe it's the 4 laws of Flurf. The first law of Flurf is Flurf citations always contradict the Flurf as long as they're not citing another Flurf. Okay. It's not as strong with creationists. The first law of creationism is that creationist citations never support the creationist point unless they're citing another creationist, which is a little bit weaker because they don't always contradict. Sometimes they're just irrelevant, right? But they don't always, but they never support. Okay. So we'll take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if either Bent or I can predict what the next thing that Kent is going to go for is going to be. That's predictions. Take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if anyone super chats anything or memberships milestone chats anything to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks. Now you do have to be a little clever with that. You can't just type in answers in Genesis is a bag of dicks, because the bag of dicks thing is going to be censored. So you have to be a little clever. You have to work around it, or sometimes you just have to use a different language because for some reason YouTube only seems to monitor English when it comes to censoring things. Apparently, they just don't care about French or Spanish or Japanese or whatever, right? There's like, who cares? Censoring other parts of the world that aren't, part of like the Anglophones? No, we're not into it. Okay. A little weird, but hey. So we will also take a drink for every membership that is gifted. Remember, if we get enough memberships, which we're not very close to right now, but we could get there, the plan is for there to be a Mudkip, which the 2 P's, Mudkip, like Kip Davis, emoji, based on the Mudkip art that was sent to me for use in Dapper Reacts when I have Kip and Vishanti on. So if you like that, it could be an emoji if we get enough memberships. So hey, send some memberships. We'll take drinks, and we'll get closer to the Mudkip. Let's see. We will also take a drink if you membership, milestone chat, or super chat anything with any of the kaiju emojis that are here just for channel members. So that's cool. We'll also take a drink if Mothra or Godzilla come by audibly, which may or may not happen. And what am I missing, Bent?
You got them all.
I got them all. Unlike in Pokemon, where I never did. Never caught them all. Sad.
That's a shame.
In Pokemon Go. Alright. My Unfinished Journey for $6.66 says, Hail Nero, hail Daps and Bent, and hail Daps checking out my revised Blue Sky post eventually. Alright. Osiris Phantom AIG for 200 Argentinian pesos says, why are creationists obsessed with Lucy's feet? Guys, there are websites for that. Not that I'd know. I mean, it's a good question. Why are they so obsessed? And then John Hopkins comes in for $5, says, probably used before, but the Pope. Oh, is that Italian? Riposte nella Genesi sono una borsa di penne. I think that's Italian. I don't actually know. I don't speak Italian, but I'll take a drink for it. I mean, I can read it because it's obviously a Romance language, which, generally speaking, if it's I'll say if it's a Western Romance language, I can probably read at least 40-ish% of it. At least. Sometimes it goes higher, sometimes it goes lower. And then Naranda puts gifted a membership, so we'll take a drink for that membership. Thank you very much. All right, so basically, I am going to be occasionally checking the fundraiser. I will put a link to it in the live chat. It should also be in the description. If it's not, if someone could please let me know, that would be very, very handy. And we are already 1/10 of the way towards the super chat goal, which, by the way, only has about an hour and a half left. Because I figured after that, what's the point of stopping a little bit early? I'll just not. And also, we're probably going to go a minimum of 1 hour. So, for instance, if you guys just fill that up real fast, I'm not going to just stop the stream immediately. You're going to get at least an hour of Kent with Bent out of us, right? Because otherwise, I feel like I would be cheating you. So, because it's a careful balance between me feeling like, oh my god, I need to go to bed, and also, like, I would feel really, really bad if y'all came and, like, were hanging out with me, and then I was just like, all right, peace, and then just left. So, anyway, last time we were here, Kent Hovind was telling us how the Grand Canyon has the characteristics of a slow-moving river, but it has a big channel, like had been dug by a fast-moving river. And he said that scientists don't have an explanation for that. And last time, I left somewhat frustrated. I don't know if you were there for the last one at the very end. I was a little heated. And so I basically was like, all right, calling it before we go too far. So now that now that I'm at a more even level, and also way too exhausted to feel angry, what I want to point out is that one of the big reasons that we think the Colorado River looks like a slow-moving, low-slope river in terms of its meanders and windings and stuff like that, but it has a steep canyon like a fast-moving river, is that what happened was that when the Gulf of California opened up, which is actually the California plate moving away from the North American plate, that caused an overall increase in the slope that the Colorado River was flowing around. And this happened before the orogeny that really pushed up the plateaus that it goes through, that it cuts through. So the order is, we get a slow-moving Colorado River, then there's a change in the elevation, and the river is already in a course. And so the change in elevation is such that while the river speeds up, it doesn't speed up fast enough to significantly change its course as that's happening. And then it starts this down cut into a channel, and then at that point it's sort of locked into that course. It's not going to change that course anytime soon because it's already locked into it by digging down. And then as the California rift opens up further, that increases the flow rate till about what we have today. And then as uplift happens, that increased flow rate is able to downcut at least as fast as the uplift, which is how we get the canyon flowing through those uplifts. So that's the explanation. That's how it happened. Kent's explanation is, what if it was flood runoff? Which doesn't make any sense, because flood runoff makes neither winding channels nor steep-sided canyons. So Kent's idea explains neither of the features that are confusing about the Grand Canyon. So that's fun. But here is Kent, and he's going to tell us now more about how he thinks this was formed. Let's see. It is Italian. Let's see. Penne is penis, penne is pasta. Which is why my Unfinished Journey says, I now see that type of pasta in a whole new light. Look, there's a lot of Italian food words that are interesting. You ever have pasta puttanesca, Bent?
I don't think so.
Well, it's a fairly popular pasta. It's a relatively easy to make sauce, puttanesca sauce. It means prostitute pasta. Yeah. So I like it. I think it's pretty good. But, like, yeah, the idea is supposed to be that, like, it's a quick sauce that you can throw together between servicing different clients. So, you know, whatever. Humans are weird. I was going to say Italians are weird. No, humans are weird.
Yes, we are.
All right. You are. This is just a suit. Inside this, I'm a dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. Here's some Kent.
This is from the phenomena of liquefaction we mentioned earlier.
Okay, so apparently Kent is going to explain the Grand Canyon via liquefaction. So let's first hear him describe liquefaction, I think. But spoiler alert, can liquefaction explain the Grand Canyon? Ben, what's your guess?
I'm guessing no.
Yeah, no, it's not even a little bit.
Yeah.
You had an earthquake in Japan. When the ground shakes, a lot of the water comes to the surface, and the whole surface of the ground becomes like putty.
Okay, so liquefaction is a process whereby a mixture of some fluid and some particulate matter ends up acting a lot like a fluid. Also, Sharon just became a channel member at the tetrapod level. Welcome, Sharon. Everyone, send some tetrapod emojis. Don't send disgusting pelagic tunicate emojis. You'll scare Sharon away. Send tetrapod emojis and good, God-fearing, hard-working, patriotic, sessile tunicate emojis. Like normal people who don't like disgusting pelagic tunicates. Yeah. Anyway, liquefaction. So, what ends up happening is that the fluid gets within the grains and starts to separate them out more than they normally would be, which allows them to flow. Now, you can do this by forcing a lot of air into the particulates, or a lot of water. That's what quicksand is. It's basically, sand that's undergone liquefaction. But in the case of earthquakes, it's usually the vibration which is causing the particulates to separate, and therefore air comes in. So it's not actually that the water table is moving up in an earthquake normally. I guess I can't say that's impossible. That's not normally what's going on there in terms of liquefaction during an earthquake. Goopdo3, who's been a member for 36 months, says liquefaction, isn't that just Team Aqua? Yes. All right, here we go.
And the building sank in. See the building on the far right with the arrow pointing to it? The top is to the left. It is leaning over 60 degrees.
Okay.
That'll be tough to put the dishes away.
Oh, hey, that was a joke that didn't land. Those are always a delayed reaction for me because I don't even notice that they're jokes at first. I have to process it. Okay, here we go.
Cupboard. Building number.
Oh, by the way, if you don't want me to have an early night, but you do want me to drink, memberships, gift memberships. That's the way to do it, right? So if you want to up that drink counter, but you want to keep me up the whole time, gift them.
Number 3 there, leaning over pretty good. I mean, how do you fix something like that?
You don't. You pull it out and you start over.
Jack it up, right?
Oh, that was another one.
Liquefaction causes the ground to become like soup. In San Francisco, one of the biggest worries they have is the next big earthquake is not going to hurt the folks who built on the mountains as much as those that built on the fill. See, for years, you want more properties expensive out there.
I think this is the first time I've ever heard Kent mention San Francisco and not immediately then say something amazingly homophobic. So good job, Kent. You managed to mention San Francisco without being a homophobe. Okay. Without being overtly homophobic. Because obviously he's still a homophobe. That hasn't changed. But he managed to mention San Francisco without doing it explicitly.
So they build a dam, fill it full of dirt, pump all the water out, fill it full of dirt. You have new property.
Okay.
Like in Holland, build a dike, pump all the water out. Well, in Holland, they're building a dike and pumping the water out, exposing new farmland that is below sea level. I guess that's not as much of a problem.
Is there a point to any of this, Kent? You're just going on about Holland and dikes and landfills. Like, what's the point you're trying to make, Kent? Get to it. You've established that liquefaction is real. I do not dispute this. And then...
But if you build a dike, pump all the water out, and then fill it full of dirt.
Okay, then what?
All of that fill dirt is going to turn to soup first time you shake it.
I mean, it's going to depend on, a lot of factors, like what the frequency is of the vibrations, what the amplitude is, what particulates you've made, how compacted it is. But, he's not entirely wrong.
And in San Francisco, they have that problem, and other places, when the dirt the fill dirt turns to soup and buildings sink right in. Here's the Alaska earthquake, 1964. It shook the ground horribly and split the city of Anchorage just about in half. I stayed in a hotel 30 feet away from where the fault line was. You could look out the window down and see the ground actually dropped down 30 feet.
Neat. What does this have to do with the Grand Canyon? Maybe he's just switching topics from the Grand Canyon. Maybe this isn't about the Grand Canyon at all. But then, what's it about then? What does liquefaction have to do with this? Tell you what, put your best guesses as to why Kent is talking about liquefaction at all in the chat. Because, I don't know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I've never heard him speak about liquefaction before. Like, this is a new topic for him, for me. My unfinished sock member for 4 months, there we go, says, don't fill a bag with dirt and AIGs. Like and share the stream instead with a winky face emoji. Yes, do that. And also, we'll take a drink.
The hotel's built about 30 feet away from this place. They just smoothed out the dirt and planted grass. There's a hill right there. They said, oh yeah, this used to be up here back in 1964. This part sank down.
Okay.
You know, some places went up 60 feet just in a few minutes. Split a house right in half easily. You can see the earthquake did a little damage here to this place.
See, the weird thing is, this is just like a rhetorical thing, right? Normally, when you spend a lot of time establishing examples of something, it's because you think there's a dispute as to whether or not the thing you're talking about even exists in the first place, right? So if I wanted to talk to a young Earth creationist audience about, say, transitional fossils, I would have a long list to show them. See, we have a lot of them. There's a lot of transitional fossils. But if I'm talking to a group of people where there are no young Earth creationists, there are no people who are rejecting evolution, and I know that they all accept that transitional species are real, I'm going to give like max one example. I'll say, you know, transitional species, like Archaeopteryx. There you go. Move on. It's way past the move on's point. Because, hey, Bent, do you believe liquefaction occurs during earthquakes?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I
Does
do.
anyone in chat not think that liquefaction happens in earthquakes? Like, there's no dispute about this. Like, it's just bad rhetoric, right? Because all you're doing is putting your audience to sleep.
Mount St. Helens, though, did a great job of showing us what damage can be done very quickly by things like volcanoes and earthquakes. It's gone.
Okay, another topic. Yet again, I'm going to get whiplash. What is your point, Ken? What does anything of this have to do with anything that you're saying? How does a volcanic eruption have anything to do with the flood? I don't know if you know, but volcanoes aren't floods. Goop23 for $5 says, gonna give it at most one example. The yodeling slideshow begs to differ. That is for me responding to young Earth creationists, my friend. That is why it's there, because I'm responding to someone who disputes the existence of transitional fossils. It's a very different circumstance. Now, I know that primarily the people watching it don't do that, but the people I'm responding to do, and that's the difference. Also, we gotta increase the number. Here we go.
Natural disaster. On May 18, 1980, the volcano began to swell on the north side, which is the side to the right on this picture. It swelled up about 100 feet.
That's scary.
They've been watching it and said, folks, this volcano's going to blow. Get off of here. And they went around getting people off the volcano, or telling them they should get off. 60-some people did not listen and died.
It's true. A number of people were like, nah, I'm going to stay. Including some scientists who wanted to record data up to the last moment. Which, I mean, they did. They did record data up to the last moment. Unfortunately, it was their last moment. As well as the data's last moment. So, like, yeah. I guess you need to be a special kind of person to be a volcanologist. I don't know.
When it finally blew. But there were many warning signs. This volcano is going to explode.
Hey, he's right.
Instead of exploding like a normal volcano, the whole north side, which is on the right here, slid down. As all this massive amounts...
But there was also an explosion like a normal volcano, Kent. There was nothing particularly exceptional about Mount St. Helens. It was a pretty normal cinder cone volcano that had an eruption that resulted in pyroclastic flows and ashfall. I mean, that's pretty normal. Now, for the United States, it was the biggest volcanic eruption that had happened within the continental United States, in the history of the country. But, like, not even close to the biggest volcanic eruption in North American history. or even the existence of humans, because when history starts in North America is a little complicated, because the traditional definition of history has to do with writing, and writing is weird in North America. Like, there are examples of like systems of communication that are hard to classify, like the Quipu in South America, and like it's not always clear which inscriptions in parts of Mesoamerica count as writing, and there are also inscriptions that seem like maybe writing in other parts of North America, but like can't really read it, so it's hard to say. So, ignoring the fact that it's hard to define when history starts in North America, there have been bigger volcanoes.
Of material slid down, it like pulling the cork off of a bottle of pop that you shook up real bad.
That doesn't cause the side of the bottle of pop to slide down. Has Ken ever opened a bottle of soda? What?
His analogies are so bad.
I'm taking a drink. How, Kent? How do you think that that's like a soda can opening? I mean, I guess the release of pressure on its own is a similarity, but like, I don't know. I opened a bottle of soda earlier, just before this stream, and it didn't like slump down. Okay.
Shake it up, get it full of pressure, and then pull the cork off. Things come flying out. The problem is it flew to the north instead of straight up. Ash.
I mean, that's the side that exploded, so yeah. Also, it did go up. Just not that much.
Ash and steam began coming out of the volcano as, at the same time, the side is sliding down. Enormous amounts of rock and...
Hey, Ben, does that look like an explosion to you?
A little bit.
Okay, kind of like a normal volcano?
Right.
Okay. Cool.
Debris sliding off the side. All this mud and rock and everything slid down.
It wasn't primarily mud, Kent. It was mostly ash and a landslide. Neither of which are really mud, but whatever.
And ash began to come flying out. Ash and steam.
Oh yeah, you know what Templar Warden also pointed out? Soda doesn't really have a cork either, so... That's a good point. He said pull the cork off a bottle of pop. Taking a drink, I didn't even... It didn't even register. Oh my goodness. Gonna go uncork some Coke. It's a 1997 Coke. It was a good year for Coke. You know. From the California plant. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't.
As the steam and ash came flying out of this volcano, it made a massive cloud. A photographer was taking pictures from, I think, about 10 miles away. He's taking pictures, click, click, and all of a sudden the ash cloud is going about 100 and some miles an hour, started going over the top of him. And he realized, man, I better get out of here. He barely made it out with his life. Many people did not. Here's a car covered up in ash. The ash landed all over all of the United States, basically, or huge areas from this little volcano. Here's a satellite view showing...
Yeah, okay. Jillian Wren points out, to be fair to Kent, the melting glaciers cause lahars, which are superheated mudslides. Yeah, I don't know. I would call it a lahar, which I guess is kind of mud. But because it's superheated, it's weird, I guess. But whatever, yeah.
Showing the ash cloud. Mount St. Helens at the far left-hand upper corner there. Lots of the ash landed in Idaho and all across southern Washington.
Take that, potato farmers! You jerks.
This light yellow area shows where they got from a trace up to a ½ inch of ash from that one little volcano. Some areas got up to 5 inches. My sister lived north of the volcano. Now, it blew to the north, but the wind...
Is that another family member that, you never talk to anymore, Kent, because you're an abusive piece of shit, and everyone in your family hates you? Another one of those? Look, normally I wouldn't bring up family stuff when it comes to this kind of thing, but, Kent has driven away everyone who was ever close to him. Including 4 wives. Yeah. The last of which left with a bunch of their PayPal money. Because she I don't know how she managed to do this, but she managed to get her personal email as the email on their PayPal, as well as her personal bank account to be the bank account that money went to first. So when she
That's pretty
left,
smart.
she left with thousands of dollars of ministry money. Which, good
for
for
her.
you, Sandra. Yeah, good for you. And also, way to get your kid away from Kent Hovind. She came into that marriage with a child. Kent was a stepdad for a little while. I can't imagine a worse... Well, no, okay, no, I can, because, like, you know, I know of stories of, like, parents who've killed their kids, which Kent hasn't done. He's only ever killed someone else's kid. So, like, I guess I can't imagine worse parents. But, like, it's not a long list compared to how many people have been parents. Let's see. Kent Jeffrey of Aromathea Halstead for $4.99 says, "You've talked about this damn volcano so many times before. I know what it is. Get on with it." I know. To be fair though, this is Kent Hovind's like long form version, right? This is CSE, Creation Science Evangelism 104. And this CSE 10 whatever classes are Kent's college level courses, where he basically takes like 50 hours to do what he normally does in about 5. So he is stretching. Because honestly, he doesn't have that much. Let's see. Roshan, a localized standard pair Keller, who's been a member for 22 months, is at the tetrapod level, says, Kent is probably already banned from PayPal, so he... I don't know where that was supposed to go. Seeing if there's any continuation. Well, thank you very much. Let's see, Robert Edson says, so PayPal has banned them and she was the workaround? Yeah, I think that's probably what's going on there. Which, hey, Kent, when you've already had 3 messy breakups with wives in a row, I don't know, maybe don't trust Mrs. Hovind number 4 with your money. Maybe he'll learn that lesson for Mrs. Hovind number 5 if he can find one. Pro tip. If you are thinking, like, wow, I really need a guy, who should I go for? Don't go for a convicted felon cult leader who has at least one dead kid to the name of his park, and who has, you know, had at least one wife leave because she thought that the way he was handling the finances for his cult compound were illegal and would send him back to prison, and she didn't want to go to prison like the first Mrs. Hovind did. And who also brags about how he both emotionally and physically abuses children. That's not the guy you're looking for, I promise. You would probably be better off with no guy than with that guy. I've got a couple super chats. Neuron puts for $2 says, tab crash number 1 of question for the night. Oh, did we have a tab crash? I don't think we did. I don't remember refreshing. But then again, the brain isn't all here. Renee keeps getting reborn. How does this keep happening? For $2 says, guess liquefaction was just time stretching. Yeah, it does seem like it. Like, there was no point to that. Just liquefaction is a thing. Many other things are things also, Kent. Would you like to talk about how, like, I don't know, water is a thing that exists? We could talk about how snow is a thing. We could talk about the existence of whales. I don't know. Hamburgers. I like hamburgers. People know I like hamburgers. Talk about hamburgers, Kent. I don't know. Let's see. Fitz of Galapagos Islands are the Holy Land Rage is a new member. Welcome to the Amnio level. Fitz of Galapagos Islands are the Holy Land Rage. That's awesome. Oh, Neuron puts, you had a tab crash. Got it. Oh, Becca Justiniano says, if you're looking for a good payday, Kent is quite the catch, apparently. I mean, maybe. As far as I know, the only one who came out financially the better for her relationship with Kent is Sandra, and she had to pull some shenanigans to get away with it. Like, I know that, I think Sandra was okay because she never put, like, much of her, the stuff that she owned into the ministry. But Cindy was absolutely devastated. Kent's wife ended up owing the government interest on back taxes and whatnot, and being fined and put in prison for a year. So she definitely didn't come out. So, like, in terms of financial success after being Mrs. Hovind, we've basically got, like, 2 losses, 1 draw, and 1 success. At the most, that's, like, the best that we can get. I don't like those odds, right? That's a 50% chance of going down, 25% chance of being okay, and then a 25% chance of making some money. And I don't think Sandra actually made all that much money, given what I'm sure she had to put up with while being the Mrs. Hovind. I'm putting Mrs. because like there was nothing official about anything in any of these marriages except the first one. Probably because Kent doesn't want to have to go through divorce court again, because he knows that it won't go well for him if he does. So, you know.
Caught it and blew it to the east. The volcano erupted toward the north, and the wind blew it toward the east. Some of it landed in New York City. Some of the ash did. It affected the weather patterns for quite a while. But you can see the spot there in Oklahoma where quite a bit of ash landed. That's interesting. Probably one of the things that caused that would be what's called the Coriolis patterns, Coriolis effect.
How does an induced rotation make ash go to Oklahoma? I mean, I'm not saying it didn't. I'm just not sure how that's supposed to work. I'm not a meteorologist. Maybe we should have had Maddie here. Maddie, if you're in the audience, let me know. Could the Coriolis effect explain significant ashfall in Oklahoma from Mount St. Helens? Because, like, I don't freaking know. What do I know about the weather? I know it's hot. Let's see. What is it in... Well, okay, that doesn't seem right. My computer says it's 85, but I'm pretty sure that's a lie. What do you have?
I'm checking 97.
Yeah, that seems more reasonable. I don't know what it is. My computer
expected.
must be, like, thinking it's in the wrong place. That's the only thing I can think of. It's not the first time that my computer has said it's quite a bit cooler than it actually is. Kent Jeffrey of Arimathea Halstead for $4.99 says, you'd probably come out more financially stable as Mr. Hovind. Gonna keep that closet under wraps. Well, I mean, yeah, I have good reason to think that Kent is, let's say, less straight than his genocidal rhetoric towards the LGBTQ community would seem to predict. Or maybe about as straight, since, you know, there's a long history of the most virulently homophobic Christian leaders, you know, being caught with gay prostitutes, or, you know, turning their meth dealers into lovers, male meth dealers with male leaders. Yeah, that's a bit of a trope when it comes to Christian leaders who are homophobic. I don't actually subscribe to the idea that homophobes are like all closeted, either gay or bisexual or whatever. But like, there's definitely a pattern with the most outspoken of Christian leaders when it comes to homophobia, and you know, maybe being a little gay, or extremely gay. The other option. Although you gotta wonder, like, you're a gay guy. How do you? It just feels weird to me to be like, oh yeah, I wanna go and, you know, do sex things with this guy who publicly says I should be executed. Like, I feel like if anyone publicly called for my death, that would put them way lower on my list of who I would want to have sex with, regardless of how I might otherwise be inclined to have sex with someone like that. I don't know. What about you, Bent? Would you be less or more inclined to have sex with someone who actively called for your death?
Surprisingly less.
Yeah, less? Okay. Yeah. I feel like that makes sense. Osiris Phantom AIG for 200 Argentinian pesos says, Kent heard Slay Queen and took it the absolutely worst way possible. Oh, nice. All right.
As the Earth is spinning, hot air is rising and cold air is sinking.
Is he about to explain the Coriolis effect via convection cells? Is that what's about to happen? Oh my god. Oh my god.
And they're actually up and down circular currents to the atmosphere that are hundreds and hundreds of miles wide.
Yeah.
So the air rises off the equator, being hotter, sinks at the poles.
Okay. It is true that the air at the equator rises and heads away from the equator. And it is true that the air at the pole is sinking. But But there are 3 convection cell bands on Earth. So if this is the equator and this is the pole, the air from the equator goes up and then goes about a third of the way and then goes down. And the air here goes up and then another part of a third of the way and then goes down. It comes back. And then again. And this is affected by the Earth's rotation rate. If the Earth rotated more slowly, we would have fewer bands. If it rotated more quickly, we might get more bands. There is not one continuous convection cell from the equator to the poles. Or I guess that would be 2. There's like 6 of them total. 3 per hemisphere. We really should have had Maddie here. I did not know this was going to be so weather heavy.
It would have been a good choice.
Someone tag Maddie. Or message Maddie? I don't know. Get her in the chat. Let's see. Osiris Phantom AIG for 200 Argentinian pesos says, I'll be honest, if a woman threatened my life, I'd probably be aroused. Don't know if it applies to gay men. Okay. You know what, Osiris Phantom AIG? You get to... I'm not going to kink shame. I'm just going to say, be safe out there, because that sounds dangerous. And then Dutch, the place of hostilities, Tunicate for $5 says, I think he heard a bunch of terms without understanding any of them, and vomiting up a word salad of said words. Yeah, no, that does seem like what's happening, right? Like, this is mostly gibberish. But then again, that's just Kent for you. So. Okay.
If it weren't more complicated, then you just get a big circular pattern of air. It's sink.
Oh, wait. Okay, so hold on. PhD says, no, the Hadley cells do not end at the poles. Am I misremembering where the Hadley cells go? I thought there was a Hadley cell over the poles. But you know what? Like I said, not a big, what's it?
Weatherologist.
That's it. That's right. That's what I was looking for. Weatherologist.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing... Oh, no, the Hadley cells are the ones that are, like, closest to the poles, and there's a mid-latitude cell and a polar cell. Okay. Just double-checking. Like, look, when people who I respect are like, I think you got this wrong, I'm like, there's a very good chance that I did. And I think I was just misunderstanding what PhD Tony said. But PhD Tony is someone whose knowledge about things generally I respect, because PhD Tony is a smart guy.
At the poles, rise at the equator, and life would be simple. The problem is, while this is happening, the Earth is turning.
Okay.
Confusing things.
Okay. The Coriolis effect would occur with no atmosphere, right? Technically, there's a Coriolis effect on the moon. Now, the moon spins so slowly that I don't know that we could even measure it. Yeah, PhD Tony says, from memory, the Hadley cells are equatorial. Yeah, they go about a third of the way up. So since it's from 0 to 90, right, a third of that would be to 20. They go up to 20 degrees north and south. And then from 20 to 60, there's another mid-latitude cell. And then from 60 to 90, there's a polar cell on either side, right? I did double-check that, because what do I know? I'm just some dumb dinosaur. And I just forgot. What was Ken talking about, Bent?
Oh, I forgot too.
Darn it. What are you here for?
For forgetting?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to rewind just a little bit.
Get a big circular pattern of air, sink at the poles, rise at the equator, and life would be simple. The problem is, while this is happening, the Earth is turning.
Oh, right, Coriolis effect. So yeah, it would happen on the moon, right? But if you had, say, a fast-spinning body that was airless out there, say some exoplanet or something, right? You would still see a Coriolis effect. So a Coriolis effect is what is an apparent force as a result of being in a rotating frame of reference. So on Earth, we generally like to use an Earth-fixed reference frame, because that's how it just sort of feels to us. Like right now, and how would you describe what you're doing in terms of your motion at your chair?
It feels like I'm just sitting still.
Right. Now, if you were to say where something else is in relation to you that's on Earth, you probably wouldn't use a coordinate system that isn't fixed to Earth, right? Because that would be confusing.
Right.
So an example of an Earth-fixed reference frame coordinate system would be latitude and longitude, right? So if you're standing at a particular latitude and longitude, and you don't move away from that spot relative to the Earth, that coordinate system is going to stay the same relative to you. But because the Earth actually is spinning in space, if something is traveling north or south, it is also not going to, while not attached to the Earth, right? And it is actually experiencing an apparent force because its momentum wants it to keep kind of going straight. But as the Earth turns under it, it's deflected a little bit. And that the apparent force of the Coriolis effect is proportional to the speed of travel. So the faster you fly north or south, the more you're deflected. That's why, in some cases, bullets can be or artillery shells can be fairly significantly affected. That's why things like sniper training manuals and artillery manuals have correction, what do you call them? Equations for countering Coriolis. So Coriolis doesn't have to do with just the atmosphere being there. However, the fact that there are multiple convection cells is, at least in part, as a result of Coriolis effect, because it's determined by the speed of the Earth. So if Kent then goes to say that the reason that there are 3 cells is because of the Coriolis effect, then he'll be right. But if instead he says that the cells themselves are what's causing Coriolis effect, which I think is where he's going to go, because where does Kent ever go the right way, then he'll be wrong. So let's see what he's going to do. And we got another super chat. Let's see. Kent Jeffrey of Arimathea Halstead for $4.99 says, without exaggeration, my 93-year-old grandpa with Alzheimer's forms more coherent thoughts and is able to hold a conversation better than this fraud. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me very much. All right, here we go.
Confusing things. And there are several places at 30 degrees latitude and 60 degrees where
Oh, hold on.
It makes a mini circle. At the equator, because hot air rises.
He was right about that. He went back and got it right. All right, Kent. I don't know why you started with implying that the convection cells go across the entire planet, but, like, you fixed it.
The wind is generally blowing toward the equator. Not always, but that's a general rule of thumb. Well, if you're sailing along in your sailboat, everything's doing great.
I mean, it's kind of doing a sweep towards the equator, right? So, like, north of the equator, if I remember correctly, it's sort of sweeping south and east, and south of the equator is sweeping sort of north and east. So, like, there's a generally eastward trend and also a towards the equator trend when you're in the equatorial zone. So, like, he's not wrong.
When you get to the equator, all of a sudden, the wind stops. Within a few hundred miles of the equator, because now it's not blowing anymore, it's blowing up, which doesn't do your sailboat any good.
Yeah, this is general areas called the doldrums. It's a problem for sailboats. I've sailed through the equator, but it wasn't much of a problem because aircraft carriers don't rely on wind. Oh, hey, there's Mothra. Drink for Mothra. So yeah, when you're powered by a nuclear reactor, boiling water and using that to spin steam turbines and then propellers, you don't really care about the wind. Now, you do care about the wind because you're launching airplanes. You need a certain amount of headwind. So, the aircraft carrier does have to make sure that there's enough headwind in order to launch aircraft. So they cared about that. But in terms of navigation, when you're not doing flight operations, the wind means nothing.
And so many people, in the old days, the ships were stranded there. And there's a name for that. Anybody know what that's called?
Was he going to say the doldrums?
That area where there's no wind? The doldrums.
Yay! I'm going to take a drink. I'm going to count that as a confirmed prediction. Don't at me. I'm kind of thirsty.
Is the name for the no wind. But those latitudes are called the horse latitudes. Anybody know why? They were stuck there for so long with no wind, they would be rowing these massive ships. Or they put the little rowboats out there and tie a rope to the big ship. Okay, guys, pull. And
what does that have to do with horses?
They threw horses overboard because, it's going to take them weeks to get through here, and you couldn't afford to feed them.
Why wouldn't you eat them? Like, why wouldn't you eat them, Kent? I know that people don't normally eat horses when you're not French, right? But if you're on an old-timey wooden sailing ship, and you're not sure when you're going to make landfall next, that means that you have to worry about your supplies. You've only got so much hardtack. So, like, Eat the horse. What are you talking about, Kent? Throwing the horse overboard. It's a waste of food. And yeah, you can't row a galleon, as Jillian Palmfoot Wren points out. You can't. These aren't like ancient Greek triremes or something, where you can just put the oars out and row. I also am very unconvinced that you can actually use a rowboat as a tugboat for like a sailing ship, like a big old wooden sailing ship that you might go exploring in. It's not actually wrong about throwing horses overboard. Why don't you eat them? Just eat them. I don't know the history of sail. In fact, actually, a relative of mine once gave me a very large coffee table book that was the history of the United States Navy. I refused to take it. I did not want a gigantic book with the seal of the Navy anywhere in my house. If you look around, like, at things that I own, I want you to guess how many of them have the seal of the Navy on them.
Can I guess?
Yes, you may.
0?
Yeah, it's 0. Yeah. For some reason, not all of my relatives got the memo that I did not enjoy the Navy. To be fair, I didn't send them a copy of my like exit interview essay thing that they had me write, and then they asked me very, very politely to rewrite, so as to not make them all look like pieces of crap. And then I declined because I was getting out of the Navy, and they no longer had any power over me.
You're going to run out of food for your people.
Kent Jeffrey of Arimathea Hill says the horse would only be good for a day, right? They didn't have fridges. I mean, yeah, but like, still, you throw the rest of it off overboard, and then you still have an extra day of food.
Horse latitudes. Or they ate the horses.
Yeah.
Mount St. Helens on the far right here is 1 cubic kilometer.
Okay, so that was just a digression with no point. We're back to Mount St. Helens. Kent just felt like talking about the doldrums and the horse latitudes and the Coriolis effect for just some reason. Cool.
I'm still waiting for an explanation on why he's talking about liquefaction earlier.
Yeah, no, that was also apparently just a random bit of nonsense.
Yeah.
And hey, I had my first tab crash. Woo!
Nice.
And we're only 1/3 of the way through the goal, so I don't know. I don't think we're gonna get it. Only got about 40 minutes left.
Of ejecta, it's called. That's the material that was blown out. This would be the ash, lava, etc. Mount Tambora did 80 cubic kilometers. Mount Krakatoa is the, as far as anybody's aware, this would be one of the loudest noises ever on the planet. That volcano is in Indonesia, down near Vietnam.
Yep, people for a very wide radius had their eardrums ruptured. People as far away as like the British Isles thought there was a gunshot. From Indonesia.
That's so far away.
Yup.
That's ridiculous.
Baba Ali says, not even your military ID? I don't have a military ID. I had a military ID, but I'm pretty sure they take it away when you leave, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they like take it and shred it, and then they give you a piece of paper that you're supposed to show at like the gate and at the prow of the ship. And it's like, yeah, see, this is me. I'm getting out of the Navy. Let me through, please. And I remember that the guy at the prow gave me this big old smile. I was like, yeah, this guy knows what's up.
Congratulations.
Yep, exactly. It's gonna be all formal and whatnot, but like, big old grin. I was like, yeah, you get it.
When it erupted in 1883, it blew the entire mountain away. It didn't just blow a hole out, it blew the whole mountain off. It's gone. It made a tidal wave that went across the Indian Ocean. Let me grab the globe here.
I don't really like the phrase tidal wave because it makes it feel like it's a wave that's coming because of the tide. That's why I prefer tsunami, but like, whatever. I'm not gonna take a drink for Kent using a term I don't prefer, but that is a pretty common way to refer to those. I just want to point out I'm not a huge fan of it.
The tidal wave went across the Indian Ocean, 2,000 miles.
ONB, Spoiled Bone Pits, and Parsimonious Charlatans says, was Bent the guy at the prow? No, I don't think Bent was ever the guy at the prow.
It was never me, no.
Or me.
Miles an hour. Volcano erupted here in Indonesia. The tidal wave went all the way across the Indian Ocean and hit this island, Madagascar.
Madagascar. That is the weirdest way to say Madagascar I've ever heard. But, like, whatever. It's just weird. It's like water. Kent just... The weird thing about Kent is, like, I can't place, like, his accent. I think that's partly because he's moved around a lot. But, like, I'm not aware of any dialects where Madagascar is the normal way to say Madagascar, or water is how you normally say water. Like, I don't know.
A 90-foot tidal wave. People are over.
Oh, hey. Depraved Ambience says, I also prefer tsunami, and I appreciate your pronunciation at Dapper Dinosaur. Yeah, because I don't say tsunami, I say tsunami. Put the T in there, because it's in the word. It's not tsunami, it's tsunami. When you say it. Bent, can you say tsunami?
Tsunami.
Nice.
I did it.
Woo. You know, but for as much as you say that you're not good at languages, I find that you're actually really good at pronouncing things.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Like, you're surprisingly good at pronouncing Klingon, even if you don't understand it.
That's true. I can pronounce Klingon very well.
Yeah. So, hey. Like, I'm pretty sure Chesh knows more Klingon than you, but you're significantly better at pronouncing it.
That's good. She should practice.
She should.
Over here. Absolutely no warning whatsoever. All of a sudden, a 90-foot wave comes in. What's that going to do to the folks that live along the beach? Going to make a problem, right? Killed, I think, 36,000 people on Madagascar. No warning whatsoever. When that happens, that's called a tsunami. T-S-U... Nami. Japanese.
We'll just drink. It's fine. I'm glad he actually had the T in there. Didn't forget that.
Japanese word for big wave, I guess.
Yeah, it literally is. It's just the Japanese word for that phenomenon. You know why the Japanese have their own word for that? Because it happens a lot there. So, like, yeah. Yep.
I don't know what it's for. But,
Kent Jeffrey of Arimathea Halstead says Madagascar might be pronounced like that in the northern Wisconsin, like Upers. Well, wait, Upers is a Michigan thing because the Upper Peninsula is Michigan. But then again, I know of people from Wisconsin who do kind of sound like Upers. So, like,
there's a
I
misnomer.
grew up in Wisconsin, and we pronounce it Madagascar, where I grew up at least.
well, there you go. Osiris Phantom AIGs. I gotta switch over my tab here. Says for 200 Argentinian pesos, Dapper, I want to pronounce tsunami with a TS because that's how it's supposed to be. Also, Dapper when speaking Latin, Spanish, Italian. Yeah. Look, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I am not perfect.
People call it a tidal wave. It's not technically a tidal wave. A tidal wave is caused by the tide, okay? But we call it a tidal wave. Actually, it's a tsunami that's caused by an earthquake or a volcano. Rapid movement of the...
Hey, fun fact. The reason volcanoes cause it is because they cause earthquakes. Yep. It's not a fault line slip earthquake, but it's still an earthquake. The earth is quaking. The earth is moving around and shaking. Oh, how did that go to full screen? How do I get it to not be full screen? That's weird. This is weird. Why is it doing this? And why it do this?
I don't know. Press escape.
I did press escape. I'm pressing escape.
No, then I don't know. That was my best guess.
I don't know what to do. I'll take a drink for Ben or for Dapper's a professional. Okay, view. We'll check out the view playlist.
Press enter.
Sure. Nope. Oh, something happened. Why? Why? Help out in chat, everybody. Try turning it off and on again. Yeah, I might.
It's not a bad idea.
Let's see. Why? Nope.
Press 2.
2?
Yeah, 2. That might restore its size.
This is weird. Why is this happening? I hate this. All right. Well, we're at 2437. Let's see what happens if I open it up again. No, it's back.
Welcome to class number 4 of our CSE 104. And we're going to take up where we left off last week, talking about the flood. What effects did this cause on the Earth? We mentioned how that probably right after the flood was over, the oceans were actually smaller.
Know what the heck is going on right
This
now.
would expose enormous amounts of land that currently are underwater, called the continental shelf.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, but hey, drink from Mothra while we try to figure this crap out.
Welcome to class number.
Why can't I move this? This is really, really dumb. Alt-Enter? Nope. I just tried smashing various keys. It didn't work.
That's a shame. I wish it would have.
Is that... What? Why? Alright, well, it kind of seems like it's... Nope, that's not it.
Welcome to class number 4 of our CSE.
What? Why is this doing this? Nope. Just go to... There's like no X button or anything. I'm looking around. View. Minimal interface. Advanced controls. No, what? That didn't do it. Interlace. Oh my goodness. Why is this happening? This is the worst. I'll try a different media player. And I'll try to figure it out later. Let me switch which thing is doing what.
Welcome to class number 4 of our CSE 104. And we're going to take up where we left off last week.
Then I have to share it with Bent again.
What effects did this cause on the Earth? We mentioned how that probably right after the flood was over, the oceans were actually smaller.
Okay, so where were we? 23 something? Did you remember, Bent?
Yeah, I didn't write it down.
Mount Tambora
That's close enough. Can you see it?
Mount Krakatoa is the, as far as anybody's aware, this would be one of the loudest noises ever on the planet. That volcano is in Indonesia, down near Vietnam. When it erupted in 1883, it blew the entire mountain away. It didn't just blow a hole out, it blew the whole mountain off. It's gone. It made a tidal wave that went across the Indian Ocean. Let me grab the globe here. The tidal wave went across the Indian Ocean.
Jillian says, come back to it fresh after a good night's sleep. I can't. We haven't reached the goal. In fact, we're actually post-due for a little quick break where I can refresh my drink. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. The good news is I got it fixed. So that's the good news. The bad news is that there was just an emergency alert about both a dust storm and flash flooding. So like, yeah, that's happening.
Thanks, Maddie, for the weather.
Yeah, I'll take a Tapper's a professional drink because I'm just going to assume that problem was my problem. So there we go. But yeah, like I don't know, maybe the house is about to get washed away. I don't know what to do about that.
Do you know how to swim?
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll be fine.
I feel like some of the people who've died in the recent flash floods in Texas also knew how to swim.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, if we get a flash flood, we are going to end this early. Because the house will be gone or something. So like, yeah, I don't know. But hey, we'll do the quick post break thing. Sorry, the break was a little extra long. I had to work on a few things. But this channel is in fact supported primarily through the generosity of the people who are watching, whether it be through super chats, membership gifting, the Patreon, and whatnot. If you are currently enjoying what I'm doing and you would like to help out, there are a few ways to do that. The Patreon is linked in the description. It starts at $1 a month. There's a 15% discount if you go annually. The memberships start at $1.99 a month. They give you access to the channel emojis and the cool little green name and the channel badges. Additionally, if I think I just heard thunder. That's fun. Additionally, if you join either of those, you get early access to videos, as well as access to the Discord server that's just for supporters. If that's not your thing, there's also a wish list for both me and Bent linked in the description. Also, there's merch below this, and also, of course, liking and sharing is also very, very helpful. It really does help out a lot. And yeah, so yeah, basically, if I don't get support there, I kind of have to stop, and I would rather not. Because I like helping you guys learn things. I like learning things. I like making videos. I like making animations for videos, all that cool stuff. Also, if you would like to help out our friend Vishanti, who's currently on some hard times, you can at the link in the pinned chat. So, you know, feel free to do that. I think there is another just over 2 weeks left on it. So, you know, if you want to help out there, that is a perfectly acceptable way, and we do count it towards all the goals, although I don't think we're hitting any of the goals today. Sorry, Ben, no food for you.
I can starve.
Chat doesn't like you today.
That's all right. I still like chat.
90-foot tidal wave. People are over here. Absolutely no warning whatsoever. All of a sudden, a 90-foot wave comes in. What's that going to do to the folks that live along the beach? Going to make a problem, right? Killed, I think, 36,000 people on Madagascar. No warning whatsoever. When that happens, that's called a tsunami. T-S-U-nami.
N-A-M-I?
Japanese word for big wave, I guess. I don't know what it's for. But
sorry,
there's
we
a
had to go back
misnomer.
because
Some
I'm
people
not
call
sure
it a tidal wave. It's not technically a tidal wave. A tidal wave is what
also, I like how he says it's a misnomer when he also used that earlier today.
by the tide, okay? But we call it a tidal wave. Actually, it's a tsunami that's caused by an earthquake or a volcano. Rapid movement of the Earth sends this wave out.
You know what you call it? Rapid movement of the Earth, Kent? It's a volcano. I mean, it's an earthquake. Jeez. I'm telling you, my brain is fried today. Too much working on the editing. In fact, actually, the editing for this video was like absurdly like dumb for some reason. I just kept screwing things up and having to go back and rewatch, and I don't know why, but today's editing was just not going well. But Pegachase Anti-Gravity Rapture Device for $5 says, we'd all rather you not become one of billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. Thank you. You can't stop me from drowning in a flash flood. I don't think you have the power for that. However, if you would like to stop me from dying of exposure or starvation, or, I don't know, being beaten to death by cops for not paying taxes or something, those super chats or membership miles or membership gifting, that's how you do it. That's how you do it.
very rapidly. And people in San Francisco in the earthquake, the ones that survived, one guy, his testimony, he was up in a real tall building looking out the window, and the ground began to wave. Just he thought he was on the ocean, because the ground itself is waving up and down. And he could see it coming toward him. All of a sudden, his building began to shake. And
Yep, that's how waves work.
down. And he happened to survive. Okay, who cares?
Yeah, Ken, who cares about any of this? What point are you trying to make? The topic of this is the biblical flood and its effects. Are you saying that it caused earthquakes? Is that the connection you want me to draw? You could get there.
The ash blown out of Mount St. Helens was pretty interesting.
Nope, back to Mount St. Helens.
Mud and ash
ash.
and steam were the big problems from this volcano. Here you can see a picture of a mud slide sliding down the side of the volcano.
Neat.
This rapid mudslide did enormous damage down there. I've been to it a couple of times since it happened. It tore trees up like they were nothing, you know, toothpicks, and boulders and trucks and everything moved down in this mud flow. Here's a
Vagary Vegan Vagabond of Variant Vista says, do we need to pay you to take another vacation? Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's sort of why the super chat goal is what it is, so I can take like a half an hour vacation. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen, so you can't. Well, I mean, you can. You should try harder.
semi, they got caught in the mud flow. Boss is going to be mad about that, I can tell you right now. Looks like the semi is parked up against a motorhome. The guy came home to visit. I went and visited an A-frame house, which the people just had almost done, ready to move into. And the mud flow came down the river and filled their house halfway full of mud.
I feel like it would have knocked the house over. But I guess I don't know.
Just abandon it. You can still, if you ever go to Mount St. Helens, you can stop on the road up there to Mount St. Helens. You can stop and see the A-frame house. It's still there, half full of mud. Probably for sale, cheap. Okay. Here, this picture in the center, you can see Mount St. Helens, crater with lava dome, the entire lake. Now it's all of a sudden has a glacier, and I forget the name of it now. But I mean, these things are 200 feet thick, solid ice.
I was talking about glaciers, by the way.
Well, chunks of ice as big as this building were blown down into the valley when Mount St. Helens blew.
Okay.
Then all this hot mud flows over the top. Well, hot mud on top of ice is going to create a problem. Ice is going to melt, turning to water. It's going to shrink 12%. Then it's going to turn to steam, which means it's going to expand 1,700 times. That's how a steam engine works.
Taking a drink. What does any of this have to do with the flood, Kent? Coop23 for $5 says, I think boss is going to be mad as a joke that didn't land. Also, enjoy the money. Thank you. Yeah, actually, you're right. I think that is a joke that didn't land. We'll take another drink. And we will update this. Let me just give it 1 second. All right. Here we go.
Drop of water turns to steam, enormous pressure.
Yes, Kent, everyone knows this. This isn't news. If you've ever had a a kettle with a little whistly end, then you know how this works.
Pushes the piston, turns the wheels, whatever you're trying to do with it.
Hooray! I mean, usually you use it to turn a turbine and then whatever, it doesn't matter.
This hot mud over the top of these blocks of ice created a problem. The ice began to explode as it tried to expand under the hot mud.
Neat.
There were explosions that were so loud, people thought the volcano was erupting again.
Or since it's the USA, maybe people were just shooting around. One of my favorite games in America is Gunshot or Firecracker or Firework. Can never be too sure. Yep. And unfortunately, here in this part of the country, we don't have basements. And so I don't know where I would go if there were actually gunshots. I guess maybe I'd lay down in the tub. I can't really fit in the tub very well, being a 2-meter tall dinosaur. Oh well. Actually, I've actually not been in a situation where I felt like I needed to hide from gunfire while in Arizona. But that's not true for when I was living in Washington State. Yeah. I don't know, I'm pretty sure I've told the story before, but there was definitely a time when I was living in Washington State, and someone, the house next to me, was raided by SWAT because apparently there was a meth lab in it. And so I'm sitting up on the first floor, and I hear this whole like announcement like, "Oh, we've got the house surrounded. Come up with your hands up." And I'm like, what? So I look outside, and I'm like, they're surrounding the next door house, but there's a bunch of guys with rifles pointed at the house. I'm like, you know what? The basement walls are made of stone and a layer of concrete, and no one's gonna be aiming down into the basement. So I'm just gonna go down to the basement for a little while. Which, to be fair, is where I had my computer and my painting station and my gaming table. And there was also a bar that I didn't really use, but it existed down there. So it's not like it was like down in some dank, horrible basement. There was like carpet and whatnot. But yeah, only place I've ever really felt like I needed to hide from potential gunfire was in Washington State in terms of places I've lived. So, congrats, Bent. You have a safer house than the one I lived in Washington.
Oh, good. Until this flood tears it down.
Well, to be fair, that basement also flooded, although it wasn't a flash flood. But you know.
After the explosion, the ice explosion, there would be a pit there, which everything would slump back in.
Okay.
All around this steam explosion pit, you can see erosion marks. Now, I guarantee some teacher's going to take his kids here someday, and now, kids, this took, he's going to say, kids, this took thousands or millions of years to form.
I'll bet they won't. You know why? Because it's subaerial ash, Kent. We know what forms subaerial ash, and we know it doesn't take millions of years for those layers to form. You know how we know? Because we watch it happen. Oh, were there super chats that I'm missing? Oh, there was. Oh, yeah. Dutch the Place of Hostilities Tunicate says, I think Kent's Oops All Tangents 101. Yeah, he is. Thank you very much to, who was it that alerted me? It was Dutch Tunicates, yeah. Please do alert me if I miss a super chat. I don't want to, but I think that super chat came in while I had a tab crash on YouTube, because for some reason, YouTube just likes to crash all the time.
No, this took about 15 seconds to form. Didn't take thousands or millions a year.
Yes, Ken. Different geological processes happen at different rates. This is not news to geologists, you might be surprised to learn. Like, if you ask a geologist, hey, does every single formation take about the same amount of time to form its vertical extent as every other formation? They're gonna say no. I did read Goop23's super chat. I'll read it again. Goop23 for $5 says, I think boss is gonna be mad. Is a joke that didn't land. Also enjoy the money. We even drank for it. I think you just weren't here.
The river system formed in 9 hours. The whole river, after it got blocked off, the landslide of May 18th buried the river and highway to Spirit Lake to an average depth of 100 feet. It also buried most other drainages in the 23 square miles of Upper Toutle Valley and plugged the valley's mouth. For 22 months, water had no established path to the lower waterway. Then on March 19th, 1982, almost 2 years later, an eruption melted a large snowpack that had accumulated in the crater over the winter. The waters mixed with loose material on the slopes of the mountain, creating an enormous mud flow. In 9 hours, while no one watched, the mud flow carved an integrated system of drainages over much of the valley and reopened the way to the Pacific Ocean. The drainages included at least 3 canyons 100 feet deep. One was nicknamed the Little Grand Canyon of the Toutle because it was a 1/40th scale model of the Grand Canyon.
Okay, but here are a few problems. One, it wasn't actually a 1/40th scale. There are some significant differences between the Toutle River Gorge, which is more really what it is than a canyon, and the actual Grand Canyon. One, the Toutle River doesn't have, in this area, it doesn't have a whole lot of switchbacks. I know, I've seen it on satellite. Okay, two, the sides of the canyon are not nearly as sheer as the Grand Canyon. Ben, you remember the Grand Canyon and how it had some, like, almost entirely vertical sections of canyon wall?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Toutle River Gorge doesn't have any. 3, the rock there isn't rock. It's unconsolidated ash. Unlike at the Grand Canyon, where the rock is, rock. It's not surprising that water can carve through unconsolidated volcanic ash in a matter of minutes. But again, it's not going to have those steep vertical walls like the Grand Canyon does. And it doesn't. So Kent, what you have alerted to us to is that one erosion happens, and that's it. You just pointed out erosion happens, you guys. Okay, but it happens at different rates at different times, and different formations come out of it. The only similarities between these two are the similarities that are common to all erosional features across the entire planet. But in terms of the erosional features that are unique to different kinds of erosion or eroding through different kinds of material, there is basically no similarity. So, no, this doesn't explain it. Do 3 for $5 says, Kent, how do you know what happened if no one watched? Were you there? That's a good point. That's a good point. Kent was not there, to my knowledge. 3. Oop, almost put in the wrong number. Okay, here we go.
There are quite a few different Little Grand Canyons, okay? There's a Little Grand Canyon in Georgia. We talked about that last class. There's a Little Grand Canyon in Pennsylvania. There's a Little Grand Canyon.
Hey, Bent. Any vertical sections there?
No.
Weird.
In Washington State. This river was blocked off. When it finally got deep enough to go over the top, it began to carve out canyons.
I mean, it didn't, but okay. Or at least it didn't in the same way the Grand Canyon is carved out. Because again, it doesn't actually look like the Grand Canyon. And I'm glad the Mount St. Helens Visitor Center says that it does. But guess what? The Visitor Center is there to get people who were just kind of visiting one day to, like, be interested in where they are. They're not actually a really great source of things like geomorphology information, right? Like, I haven't been to this Mount St. Helens Visitor Center, but I've been to the Grand Canyon Visitor Center. And while the visitor signs are fine, I would not count on them for reliable technical information about the geology of the Grand Canyon. They're giving you an overview at best. At best. And even then, sometimes they lack a little bit of nuance. Oh, hey, Vishanti made it. Or wait, or is it just the emojis? Is Vishanti actually here? Oh, yep, she is. Okay. I just saw a lot of Vishanti emojis, but I was like, but is the person here?
Gullies in a hurry.
Hey, gullies and canyons aren't the same thing. Gullies are another erosional features that aren't canyons.
This canyon, formed in just a few hours, it's 1,000 feet wide, 140 feet deep, 2,000 feet long. Once water starts going over a dam, erosion can take place very, very quickly.
It's true. That's true. Take a drink. It can. But when water breaks through a dam, it tends to form straight channels with sloping U-shaped walls, not V or nearly vertical walls like we can see in the Grand Canyon in various sections. Which means that it's not a good explanation for the Grand Canyon, although I'm glad that he's now actually getting to a point, right? Oh my goodness. Valdevia, an artist both Vishanti and I follow, is doing horror with tunicates. Well, they better be pelagic tunicates, because if there's one thing pelagic tunicates are good for, it's horror, and you can tell him I said that, because, you know, I'm busy with my show.
Here's a Grand Canyon in Yellowstone National Park, Wyoming, another little Grand Canyon, I think they call it.
Ken, you think maybe the reason that everyone calls their canyon the Little Grand Canyon is just marketing? Rather than some actual profound similarity to the Grand Canyon? I don't know. I think it is. It's not like you can copyright or trademark the Grand Canyon. Although at this rate, I wonder... Okay, here we go. We're going to start a poll. Here we go. Will the Grand Canyon be renamed the Canyon of America? What do you think, Ben? Will the Grand Canyon be renamed the Canyon of America anytime soon?
I don't think so.
No. I mean, the Gulf of Mexico got renamed.
You're right.
Okay.
That probably formed in a couple of hours as the flood went off. Didn't form slowly over millions of years.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about the canyon in Yellowstone to be able to say. I don't know what the lithology is there. I don't know anything about the stratigraphy. I don't know what the shape of the canyon. So, like, maybe it did form in a few hours. I just don't know.
In the sides of these canyons, you can see layers of rock. Here's the drainage pattern that the mud flow did in 1982 in Mount St. Helens. Here's a person standing on the edge looking down into this massive canyon, which formed just in 9 hours.
I would not stand there. You know why? Because that's not solid rock. But then again, maybe I'm just a coward.
At the bottom, you can see a person down there for scale. Above her head, there are all sorts of layers.
There are layers, but you notice how they look kind of crumbly? You want to know why? Because that's not rock. That's not rock. Yeah. So I agree that water can cut through unconsolidated ash real quick. Can it do it with solid rock, Kent? Because, like, we know what the Grand Canyon is made of, and we know what the angle of repose of those substances are under air. And it's not like 90 degrees. In fact, actually, volcanic ash has a fairly high angle of repose, as far as I know, because it's somewhat jagged, and so it's easier for it to lock together. Whereas, you know, a lot of sand grains or silt or lime grains don't, and so they actually have fairly shallow angles of repose. And the Grand Canyon walls are generally much steeper than the angle of repose of the particulate matter that the Grand Canyon rocks are made of, which means it had to form after it was rock, which means it must have taken longer, because again, it takes longer to carve through solid rock than unconsolidated volcanic ash.
Now, all of these layers were formed quickly as the mud flowed in, and the canyon formed quickly as the water washed through.
Yep.
I guarantee you some teacher's going to bring his kids here someday and say, boys and girls, each layer is a different year, so this represents thousands of years of...
I guarantee you that's not going to happen, Kent. Because that's not how geology works. You don't just look at how many layers there are, then assume some time frame for each layer, and then count up the layers. It's far more complex than that. Every single different type of sediment has different deposition rates in different depositional environments, and the rates themselves can vary, and you can tell from things like presence of things like cross-bedding, how well worn the particulates are, whether or not there's floccules in the sand or the sedimentary rock. You can tell these things. And then on top of that, there's a lithification time. The time it takes for the overburden of that rock layer to squeeze the water out, leaving behind mostly just the cementing agent, which then crystallizes around the sediment. That also takes time, Kent. And then there are erosional features that are in the Grand Canyon. There's a whole extra canyon in the Grand Canyon that's been filled in with sediment that was at a canyon before the Grand Canyon even existed. It's called the Surprise Canyon. You can go look at the Surprise Canyon group rocks in the Grand Canyon. How does that happen under a flood? And it had time to lithify. And then the river has to carve through the lithified rock. Again, we know it was lithified because the angles at the canyon do not correspond to the angles of repose that those particulates would have if the Grand Canyon were carved out before the consolidation of the rock. But that's not true for the Tula River Formation, which is in fact made of unconsolidated ash, and it does have canyon walls that are consistent with the angle of repose of that ash, because how could it not? It's unconsolidated ash. Now I'm realizing I don't think everyone knows what an angle of repose is. So, let's say you take a bucket of sand, right? And you just pour it out on the floor on some like tiles or something, right? It's going to form a little mound. And that mound is going to have a particular angle to it, right? If you measured it versus the ground. Each side, it's going to form a sort of a cone. There's going to be an angle to that. That angle is called the angle of repose. It's the steepest angle that that particulate stuff can maintain. And it's what happens if you just pour it out basically one on top of each other. Pour out too fast, it might just flatten out from the pressure, but like, you know, if you pour it out slowly. Now, sand in air has an angle of repose of about 35 degrees most of the time. It varies a little bit, but it's about 35 degrees. Which means if you just carve through some sand, the sand is going to collapse and you're going to end with, say, walls of a canyon of about 35 degrees. But there's sandstone in the Grand Canyon where the layers have a cliff face that is much, much, much steeper than 35 degrees. What does that mean of necessity? The sandstone was sandstone when it was carved through, and it wasn't sand. So he's comparing carving through solid rock with carving through particulate matter. Obviously, the particulates not being bound to each other are easier to carve through. And scientists can tell this. You can go to the formation, and you can poke the wall, and it will just crumble because it's still just unconsolidated ash. It hasn't turned to tuff yet, which is the stone that volcanic ash turns into after it lithifies. It's called tuff. There's also tuffaceous sedimentary rock, which is sedimentary rock that contains, I think, up to 50% tuff, but don't quote me on that because it's been a while since I looked it up. But that's sedimentary rock that's not mostly ash, but it has a bunch of ash in it.
Accumulation. No, it just represents, a few minutes of a mud flow. There's a little river at the bottom of this canyon.
So let's see. Kent Jeffrey of Arimathea Halstead says, does all sand have the same angle of repose, even the black sand? So it's going to depend on like the actual mechanical properties of the particulates. So what 35 degrees is pretty typical for most sands in air. Underwater, they'd range from about 15 to 30 degrees. And yeah, you can get different angles of repose with different size grains and whatnot. So like fine grain sand is going to have a different angle of repose slightly than like coarse sand or whatever. But it's mostly a function of grain size. But there's also other things like the shape of the grains and how angular they are and whatnot that can also have some effect. But it's mostly a grain size thing, if I remember correctly. Again, I'm very tired and I might be misremembering. So I would double check with a geology source if I were you. See how this poll is going. We've only got 31 votes, but we've got 82 people watching. Although Turtle is winning, which does seem very appropriate.
If you think that little river made that big canyon, you are mistaken.
Okay. So? Also, it kind of did, because even though it was initially sort of a flood sort of situation, that flow was still continuous with this flow. There's just a much lower volume now. So it's not really the case that that river didn't cause the canyon. It's just that it caused it when it was at a much higher volume. So, like...
And if you think the little Colorado River made that big canyon, you are just as mistaken.
Well, actually, right now the Colorado River is at a fairly historically low volume. It has been for a very long time. Throughout much of the geological history of the Grand Canyon, we were in wetter climate periods during various glacial periods where the non-glaciated parts of North America had a wetter climate, which means that the river probably would have had a significantly higher volume. So to some degree, he's right that that little tiny river wouldn't probably have carved that canyon, but it didn't need to because it wasn't that little throughout much of the history of the carving of the Grand Canyon. Which, scientists are aware of.
It didn't do it, okay? These things are evidence of a massive flood.
Just drink. It shows literally none of the signs of a flood erosional feature. And we know what those are. They're relatively smooth-sided canyons, depending on angle of repose, as well as, how extensive the flood is. There's ripple marks. There's often carried along large stones like boulders that are carried along, which doesn't really happen that much in the Grand Canyon. We know what floods do, and they don't do the Grand Canyon.
The trees that were blown down by Mount St. Helens was pretty impressive. It blew so many trees down, loggers went in there to pick up whatever logs could be salvaged. When I was there, in 2000, what month was I there? Doesn't matter, I was there. Here it is 20 years after.
The goal ended and we didn't make it. We didn't even get halfway there. It is now confirmed. My audience only pays to watch me suffer.
The eruption. I went up to see Mount St. Helens again. There are still thousands and thousands of trees laying all over.
Okay, that is a pretty cool picture. I will admit. That is pretty cool. Goop23, I can't talk. Goop23 for $5 says, Kent, how do you know it? Oh, no, we already read that one. Kent Jeffrey of Arimathea Halstead for $4.99 says, what is the goddamn point? You have made none. Yeah, no, Kent is basically useless for just about everything. Even though a lot of the stuff that he said today has actually not been super inaccurate, there's just been no point to it. Like, what difference does it make how big Krakatoa was in terms of eruptions? I don't know.
Been there for 20 years, got blown down. The trees flowed into the river, many of them, and blocked off rivers every place. Here's some semi-trucks next to some of these big logs. And if you...
That's free housing material right there.
you've never been to Washington or Oregon to see the huge trees on the western coast of the United States, you won't know what I'm talking about. But those trees are enormous.
You trying to talk about redwoods? I don't know.
Brother Pratsuk, did you live on the west coast, California or Washington? You never lived there, did you?
Okay, Ben, let me ask you this. Were you part of a church where people just called each other brother and sister?
No.
Yeah, I never was either. It always seems weird to me when you just call people brother and sister just because they happen to be like a Christian or something. Or like you're kind of Christian. That's just weird to me. And you know what? Look, I just realized that that's not part of any tradition I've ever been associated with, and like it is for Kent, and like fine. But I don't know, it's always struck me as being a little bit odd. It's not really a critique. I don't think there's any like problem. Vishanti, you call people brother and sister? Okay. Do you find it weird now when other people do it? Would be a question that I would be curious to know the answer to.
You were over there. You didn't live there. Okay. These are enormous trees. There's all sizes up there, but loggers went in there to pick up the trees. And I've heard different numbers, but several people have said, yeah, they think they picked up 900 truckloads of trees every
Seems plausible to me.
day for 7 years. And only got 10%. I sat by a guy in the airplane flying back from Seattle one time. I was preaching out there. I said, you know, what do you do for a living? We're going to be together for 3 hours, so I always talk to people on airplanes.
I would hate sitting next to Kent Hovind, even if I didn't know who he was. I do not want to talk to the person next to me on an airplane. I want to go to sleep or read my book or something like that. I do not want to talk to you. Unless, like, we actually know each other, right? Like, if I'm flying with a friend or family or something, then okay, yeah, sure. But if I'm sitting next to a stranger, I do not want to talk to you at all. I will have headphones on, even if I'm not listening to anything. Just so you don't feel like you should talk to me. I just don't want to. I don't enjoy the experience of being on a plane very much, and I just want to sleep through it or read through it or something.
You don't like being uncomfortable in your own seat?
No, it's not fun at all. Actually, what was it? Airplanes is how I got through Richard Dawkins' The Greatest Show on Earth. I read it entirely on planes. At that point in my life, I was flying a lot. Roshan, a localized standard compare color for $4.99 says, and this is supposed to be one of the CS talks meant to give homeschoolers homeschool credit. No, far worse than that. Something Kent/Eric used to track in Pensacola. This is allegedly, according to Kent, supposed to count as college credit at certain Christian colleges. Yeah, that's what this is supposed to count as. I know that this is a controversial take, and I know that there are people, both Christians and not, who disagree with me. But I don't think that creationist colleges and universities should be allowed to give STEM degrees. I think it's fine for them to give English degrees or art degrees. I'm iffy on history degrees because, you know, you have to ignore a lot of history to do young Earth creationism. But, like, I haven't really formed a firm opinion about that, so, like, But, like, STEM degrees? No. There's no way. And if you're a hiring manager and you see on someone's resume that they went to a creationist school, my recommendation would be to try to probe to see if they're actually a creationist still. And if they are, and you're hiring them for anything to do with science or math or engineering or technology, think twice. Because in order to be a young Earth creationist, you have to reject nearly all of science. It's almost as much science as flat Earth. In fact, there's really not that much of a difference. Like, you can accept gravity, I guess, and space, but, like, in terms of, like, do you have to reject large parts of physics? Yes. Do you have to reject most of biology? Yes. Do you have to reject most of geology? Yes. Do you have to reject some of meteorology? Yes. Like, virtually every part of science in some way contradicts young Earth creationism. And so I don't think they should be allowed to give STEM degrees. I guess maybe math might be okay, but then again, if you can do math and you're a young Earth creationist, then you're probably lying to people, because there are so many different ways in which various bits of math preclude young Earth creationism.
He said, I work for Weyerhaeuser Lumber Company. I'm one of the vice presidents. I said, really? I said, did Mount St. Helens affect you guys? He said, yeah, we lost, I forget how many hundreds of acres of wood got blown down. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, well, we went in there to salvage whatever we could. You know, we paid to plant all those trees, and we've been harvesting them for years. He said, it's very interesting. The government owned quite a bit of the property, and we owned quite a bit of the property.
Roshan, a localized standard compare color for $4.99 says, you don't have to reject computer science to be a young earth creationist and or a flurf. Yeah, I guess that's true. Although actually some parts of computer science do conflict with young earth creationism, because young earth creationism requires that basically particle physics not work the way that we know that it works. So while I don't think that there are too many computer scientists who would notice that problem, it is actually still contradictory with computer science. So I think that on a practical level, yeah, you can probably be a creationist and do computer science just fine. But if you really get into it, you do have to reject the things that make computers work, which is, you know, how we understand how particle physics works. So it's a little wishy-washy there. So Robert S. says, not true. That's not sure that's true. Computer science, there you go, relies on quantum mechanics. Yeah, there's that, right? So what I mean specifically by particle physics or quantum mechanics contradicts young earth creationism is that they think that spontaneous nuclear decay can just kind of change on a whim, but the rate of spontaneous nuclear decay is actually controlled by various constants in quantum physics, like the strength of the strong and weak forces. And you can't just vary those. Also, the fine structure constant. Those are things that don't just vary. We know they don't vary because we can actually confirm it over the course of several billion years with the Oklo reactor in Africa. And so, like, that same science that tells us that the rate of spontaneous decay of radioactive isotopes is largely invariant also is how we get computers to work, right? We do things like quantum tunneling and you know, using the quantum effects of like semiconductors and doping semiconductors to form transistors and whatnot. All of that requires you to do particle physics stuff. And creationism rejects some of the most important parts of particle physics. So like, I do think as a practical matter, you could probably manage it, but it's definitely the case that there are parts of computer science that conflict with young earth creationism.
The government said, oh, we're going to let nature take its course. We're not going to touch it. They left theirs. Weyerhaeuser and other paper companies and lumber companies went in there, picked up all the dead trees, planted new trees right away.
Yep, that's how you do it. If you're basically what a tree farmer is, which is what lumber and paper companies do, right? The thing is, like, you know how you probably heard in school that, like, you're killing trees if you waste paper? That's only kind of true, because those trees were only planted in order to produce the paper. So it's sort of like saying, oh, you're going to kill all the pigs if you eat too much bacon. It's like, no. When the demand for bacon goes up, the number of pigs goes up. Now, you might have other ethical concerns with consuming various meat products, and that's fine. But your consumption of meat is not contributing, well, farm meat is not contributing to the extinction of those farm animals. Not at all. It's actually contributing to their persistence, which in some cases might actually be a bad thing because of the way that, you know, factory farming works, which is a whole other thing, but I don't want to get into a whole factory farming thing. I did that once and everyone got depressed. So, yeah. Actually, I've done it a couple times and people just get depressed because factory farming is a horrendous thing. And I know that I am somewhat hypocritical in that I will eat factory farmed meat occasionally, or sometimes somewhat often, because I'm not perfect and I'm doing my best. And there are certain points where I'm like, I don't know that I can have all of this stuff as active current ethical concerns that affect me. There's just too much in the world. And like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be concerned about things like, you know, ongoing genocides or rising fascism. And like, pigs in small cages can wait. I'm sorry. Let's see. Will the Grand Canyon be renamed the Canyon of America? Turtle wins with 59%, but then yes comes in with 23%, and no only gets 17% of the 47 votes. So, like, yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Mike says, remember that time you ruined Christmas? That was funny. No, I ruined Thanksgiving, didn't I? I thought I had ruined Thanksgiving. Maybe it was Christmas.
Maybe both.
Yeah, maybe. What is it with Christmas? Why is it such an insecure holiday that it always needs to be saved? Why doesn't anyone ever save Arbor Day? I don't I mean, really, if you want a holiday that or a holiday season that needs saving, Pride needs saving. What was that one, Bent?
Another flash flood warning. It just
Oh.
extended it by 30 minutes.
Okay, how close are we to the end of the flash flood warning?
About 2 hours away.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right, let's get some more Kent in. We're almost at the end. Home stretch. I don't think Bent is going to get free pizza unless someone starts just shoving a whole bunch of gifted memberships at us. So, Bent, actually, now that I think about it, I wouldn't ask a pizza guy to come deliver to us during a flash flood warning. So, like,
Yeah.
you're going to starve either way, Bent, today.
That's all right. That's okay.
Okay. Oh, hey, Carrie Bronson joined the channel at the amulet level. Remember, we're trying to get to the next channel emoji, which is over 100 away, but it's going to be Mudkip Davis. So if you want a Mudkip Davis emoji, join the memberships or gift some memberships. And remember, once we get it, even if we fall below the threshold to get it, it stays. So we only have to get there once.
Today, on the privately owned land, the trees are 20 feet tall and doing very well.
Okay.
Established forest, okay?
No, it's a cultivated forest. It's not like it's a wild forest. It's a monotype trees like you get at a farm where you get monoculture crops. It's carefully controlled to keep out certain troublesome types of tree pests that you wouldn't do in an unmanaged forest. Like, I'm not saying that tree plantation, or what is it, groves, whatever, are bad, but like they're not the same thing as a forest. And hey, Carrie Bronson just gifted a Dapper Dinosaur membership. Thank you very much.
Many of them 30 feet tall. On the government land, because they didn't plant right away, they just said, let nature take its course. The topsoil eroded off. Now they
Okay.
won't even start growing. Their trees are 2 or 3 feet tall. The ones that in many areas are ruined.
They're ruined according to you, but like, how do you know what the best way to recover from this disaster is? Because I'm not convinced that having a fast-growing stand of like tree-farmed trees is the best way to recover in terms of nature. It's certainly one of the best ways to recover if you're, selling lumber or you're making paper out of those trees. And I'm not going to fault anyone for doing it, but like, Kent, the measurement of like, is this working in terms of recovery or nature isn't comparing it to a farm. But hey, Reggio's just gifted 20 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, so here we go. We're going to take 20 drinks, and then we're going to probably wrap things up because I'm pretty sure that's going to drain this. So let's go. Bent, you're out. So what you should do is you should tell everyone how you feel about the various Weyoun clones, and then also we'll drink for Mothra. So here's one drink for Mothra. All right, Bent, who's your favorite Weyoun clone, and why do you like that one more than the other ones? Go.
It's been so long since I've watched Weyoun episodes of Star Trek. Number 2, number 7. I can't remember how many there were. There were a couple dozen, I believe. But yeah, I don't know. We'll go with number 7. Number 7's my favorite. And I'll tell you why. You have to watch to find out.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just going to go with Brunt of the FCA as your favorite Weyoun clone. Because, they're both played by Jeffrey Combs.
They are both played by Jeffrey Combs. Yeah. I think they were in one episode together.
I think that's right. What a weird episode.
That was a good episode.
Hey,
I can't remember what season it was.
Jeffrey Combs also has a role in Lower Decks.
Did I know that?
I don't know. He plays Agamus, an evil computer that took over an entire planet and made the inhabitants worship him as a god. And then he gets stored at the Daysum Institute in a gigantic wall of such other computers that have all been worshipped as gods by various planetary civilizations. Because it seems to happen a lot in Star Trek.
Yeah, it does. That's pretty funny.
Coop Duke 3 for $2 says, it's not ruin for animals that live in the logs. Well, there's that too, right? So, like, look, there's a lot of ways to think about things like how you help nature recover from natural disasters, whether you even should, how you make sure that you're ensuring sufficient like biodiversity from native organisms, versus domesticated species that you're bringing in for commercial reasons. Like, there's a whole lot to think about. And just, ha 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 ha, farm have big tree, government land have small tree. So what? That's not just like an infallible guide to who's doing a better job of stewarding the resources. Because for one thing, most of that federal land is part of a park, right? It's part of like a national park. The parks department, like the national parks people, don't have the same goals as the commercial tree farmers. They just don't. And so just saying that because their trees are smaller, they're doing a worse job doesn't actually mean anything. Because the job of the National Park Service is not to grow big trees. It's to preserve nature within the parks so that, one, it can just exist for its own sake, but two, so that natural beauty can be preserved for, in part, mostly for the citizens of the United States, but also in general for the world, right? I have a lot of complaints about the United States, but how amazing the national parks are isn't one of them. America has some of the best national parks in the world, and I'm not going to pretend that's not true. There are a lot of amazing national parks in the United States. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't amazing parks elsewhere. My goodness, that was a lot of thunder. We might lose power. But yeah, so pointing out that national park land isn't currently being optimally utilized for commercial purposes, not really a criticism. So, you know. All right. Jillian Pomfoot Wren says, last summer we explained to a park ranger why so many young Earth creationists tried to talk to her about the Grand Canyon. Oh no. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to the park ranger mostly. Like, I honestly, I can't even imagine what it's like to be like a park ranger at the Grand Canyon and have to deal with creationists. Part of me kind of wants to try it. Like, just go to the Grand Canyon dressed as a park ranger and then just field questions from creationists. Now, I'm pretty sure it's illegal to impersonate a park ranger because they are, in fact, law enforcement in the United States. They do have the power to arrest people and put them in jails and whatnot within the bounds of the park. But, like, yeah, they are law enforcement. So I'm pretty sure, I'm not a lawyer, don't quote me, this isn't legal advice, but I'm pretty sure if you impersonate a park ranger, you're impersonating a law enforcement officer. Bad idea. Don't do that. But that's where we're going to leave things. I'm going to update the timestamp here. We are at 34:09. Which, wow, we actually got through a lot of this, partly because Kent was just meandering, and all I had to say was, okay, yeah, but why do you care, Kent? What's the point? Let's see. First of all, I want to say thank you so much. You guys are always awesome, and I really appreciate hanging out with you guys. It really is a lot of fun, and even though I am very tired, it was still fun. I still enjoyed it. I really do enjoy doing these shows. Don't get me wrong. I do like to relax afterwards, and I'm going to be going to bed right after Power Rangers, most likely. But, no, I really do appreciate it. And I am sorry that we misscheduled the show. I'm pretty sure that's why we do have a little bit lower attendance than normal, because everyone got the alert 6 hours ago, or no, 8 hours ago. So, my apologies for that. Siloof, who's been a member for 29 months, says, protect your new computer, unplug until storm gone. Oh, that's a good point. I probably should. So I guess no Power Rangers. It's going to be here for like 2 hours.
Ooh.
All right, well, yeah. Siloof being smart out there over in, what is it, Sweden? Norway? I think it's Sweden. Oh, well. All right, well, then I guess no Power Rangers. So maybe I'll go to bed a little early anyway. Well, that being said, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your night. Let's see, coming up on the channel, we've got on Thursday, we have the next video that is dropping. That is going to be, let me double check. Creationists don't care about evidence. Hovind and Sanford Part 1. Now, this is Eric Hovind. I'm not going to go through my whole spiel about Eric Hovind, why he's better than Kent Hovind, but he absolutely is unarguably better than Kent Hovind. So I'm less mean to him than I am to his dad, but he's still not great. So check that out. John Sanford is going to come in and tell us why he's actually a Christian and a creationist. And guess what? It's because he credits a church with saving his marriage, which, I mean, maybe, sure, fair enough. But then he dedicated himself to the theology of that church, and that theology is well, it includes dumb things like young Earth creationism. Jasper, title sloshing the mighty for 11 euros says Kent meanders like the Colorado River. He sure does. Boy, is that true. All right, so that is what's happening on Wednesday. That's at noon Pacific. Sorry, Thursday. That's at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm trying to rush through this so I can get through. Carrie Bronson for $2 says sleep well and wake in that case. Thank you very much. Then on Friday, I said we were playing Star Trek Endurance on Friday. It turns out, no, we're not. And if I'm being honest, I'm not very happy about it. But I plan to have something up there. I'm actually beginning to make more art assets for what's going to be the next campaign, which is probably going to be like in a year or so. But I figure if I get art assets done now, then by the time we get to that campaign, they'll be really high quality because I'll have plenty of really nice art assets. Last Friday, we did a thing where I made a basic Hive City setup because we're playing Wrath and Glory, which is a 40k game. That's going to be my next campaign, I've decided. So the next time, maybe I'll do something else. I've also worked over the weekend on some other stuff, like I did a symbol for the Forge world in the main setting, as well as a Mechanicus symbol, stuff like that. I might try to make like a Mechanicus temple or something to represent one of the Mechanicus sites on Abacris. So maybe I'll do that on Friday. If I do, that will be at 5 p.m. Pacific over on Top Hats Off, my second channel. Please show up over there. It's a lot of fun. You can hang out. You can ask me questions. Then on Saturday, we're going to be back with Dapper Reacts with Kip and Vishanti, although I think maybe Vishanti won't be there. Vishanti, remind me. Because yeah, I might be wrong that you're not going to be there, or that you're going to be there, because I think you have a thing. But anyway, we're going to be doing it. That's at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Then next Tuesday should be Jackson with Jackson. I do have to confirm with Jackson, so if it's not Jackson with Jackson, well, unfortunately, Bent, that means you're on the hook for another Kent with Bent, which I don't have a name for yet. Although I think someone might have sent me a name, so I'll have to double check through that. All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope you all stay safe out there because I might get washed away. Now, to be fair, it would take a pretty big flood because I know where the nearest drainage area is, and it's pretty lower than I am. So the river would have to come up like a good... It's not even a river at this point, but like the water would have to first be there, and then it would have to come up, I think, like 30 or 40 feet, which is possible. It's not super likely. Oh, hey, that was a big crack of thunder there. All right, bye, everybody. I hope I stay alive long enough to be at the next show. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Hovind, Tapioca Weasel, Arrow Dodger, Dan Sheedy, Elleron Teller, Phil Cavara, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostock Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, Volis, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, and John Ackerman. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.